The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank my good friend from Alaska for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 1272, the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe Judgment Fund Distribution Act of 2011, of which I am an original co-sponsor. I represent 5 of the 6 bands that constitute the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe, a sovereign, federally recognized tribal entity and the sole plaintiff in the litigation whose settlement gives rise to this legislation. The 5 bands that reside in my district are Bois Forte, Grand Portage, Mille Lacs, Leech Lake, and Fond du Lac. I've met with the representatives from all 5 bands and on a number of occasions in the 112th Congress, and they have all made it very clear to me that it is more than past time to bring resolution to this long-standing issue, and I agree. The Minnesota Chippewa Tribe entered into a $20 million legal settlement with the United States government in 1999 to compensate for damages stemming from the improper taking of land and valuation of timber under the Nelson Act of 1889. These settlement funds have been sitting in a Department of Interior trust fund ever since, and with interest have grown to about $28 million. That money now belongs to the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe. The United States' only role in this has been to hold it in trust for them until it can be distributed. Thus, I have joined with my fellow Minnesota representatives, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Paulson, in co-sponsoring the legislation before you today. This legislation puts forth a disbursement formula which reflects and honors the formula decided democratically by the governing body of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe, known as the Tribal Executive Committee. This formula, voted for and passed by the committee, supports a per capita apportionment of $300 each to each member, followed by a 6-way split for the remaining settlement funds. Importantly, H.R. 1272 will distribute the settlement funds according to the formula that has been determined by the CBO to have no budgetary impact. It is always difficult to craft a compromise between such varied and competing interests. However, the compromise represented in this bill respects the decision of the governing body of the entity that brought forth the claim on behalf of all 6 bands, and the U.S. Court of Federal Claims recognizes as having the constitutional authority to enter into a proposed settlement on behalf of all 6 bands. All 6 bands shared equally in the expense of the risk of prosecuting the case, and the Tribal Executive Committee provided the 6 bands an equal opportunity to vote on how the judgment funds should be distributed. The release of the $28 million to the members of the Chippewa Tribe will have positive implications far beyond just righting a past wrong. This money will flow directly into the hands of the bands and their members, sparking much-needed consumer activity and hopefully investment in the reservations in northern Minnesota. This will benefit the entire region. H.R. 1272 is a solution that must be enacted in order to fulfill the U.S. government's legal obligations, conclude its litigation with the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe, and release over $28 million in settlement funds in a fair and expeditious manner. Thus, I am hopeful that my colleagues will join me in support of the bill that brings resolution to this long-standing issue. I thank the Speaker, and I yield back.